All right, we're here, back in the bedroom.
Yes, for part 2.
Yes, we got such an overwhelmingly positive response on the first intimacy video, which we're very happy about. We're glad that people appreciate the conversation, and a lot of people, not just disabled people, but peripheral people too, are reaching out saying thank you. And that makes us feel so good. So here's number 2, but we're going to do a little differently.
Yeah, so we decided we're just going to do 2 parts. We went through the questions again and really narrowed them down to questions that we felt like we really needed to answer and should answer. Some questions were a little personal that we just didn't feel like it was necessary to talk about. And so we took those out, and now we have some really solid questions. 7 questions today. So there's more than last video, but I don't know if it's going to be as long because some of the questions are much easier answers. Yeah.
So we're going to dive right in.
Yes, but before we dive in again, if you haven't seen part 1, go back and check out part 1 of the series. Also, another disclaimer, we're not professionals, we're just sharing our experiences. And of course, you may do something differently than us. Yeah, just keep that in mind when watching this video.
We're not sexperts, but there are sexperts out there to go talk to.
Yes. Or just intimacy in general. It's not just about that kind of intimacy. This is all kinds of intimacy.
Right, of course. So speaking of all kinds of intimacy, here's what we're going to be chatting about. Go ahead and throw your blankets on, get cozy on the couch. We're going to talk about AD, how AD, autonomic dysreflexia, plays a role with intimacy.
Yep, we'll be talking about or sharing resources that you can use to aid with intimacy.
Separating the roles of caregiving and intimacy with your partner.
Spontaneity, and how spontaneity can be affected by disability.
Yes, and how has our perspective on intimacy changed during infertility?
And then for clinicians, what's important to remember when talking to patients about intimacy.
And how do any physical challenges or limitations affect desire to be intimate?
Okay, I guess we should dive right in.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on here. So here we go. Number 1. So can Cole ejaculate? Whoa. If so, does he get AD? Ways to help and pain.
This is a very common question though and this came from a guy with a spinal cord injury specifically, and I feel like that's a very valid question from men who have a spinal cord injury, because that's important to know. Plus, with fertility, you want to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I figured it was a little more known, at least my situation, because every SCI is different, every disability is different.
Yeah.
But in my situation, we've talked about, getting naturally pregnant at one point. That is because, yes, I can ejaculate. That's actually something that I was unaware of.
Yeah.
Before our relationship. I didn't know that. It was quite a surprise the first time it happened, because I was like, whoa. That's pretty wild.
Well, not only were you like, whoa, that's wild, you were like, whoa, my head is killing me, and I feel very uncomfortable, and Cole had severe autonomic dysreflexia.
It was bad.
Yes.
It was really bad. The only way I can describe it is literally like if someone were to drive an ice pick like straight into the front of my brain with every heartbeat. So it was literally just like, doom, pain. It was the worst AD I've ever experienced in my whole life.
I wasn't fully aware of autonomic dysreflexia at this moment, and so I think for me it was very shocking and overwhelming too.
Yeah, we were both shocked, we were both overwhelmed. It was scary. I also was scared, not just in the moment, but also thinking about my future. I was like, shoot, so is this what happens every single time?
Yeah.
That's going to be terrible. I don't want to do this. This is the worst pain, like headache I've ever experienced.
Yes.
So that sucked. What we did was we, lowered my feet and kept my head up, like tried to get my body as upright as possible to help with blood pressure. Took some Advil, drank some water, did an IC to relieve myself, make sure that was fine. But yeah, that was a very, very scary moment. And it wasn't until maybe a couple years later that we learned what was probably happening at the time was I had a bit of a UTI going on. Because in later experiences, when I had a UTI for sure, and I knew that, I had a similar experience with AD and intimacy.
Yeah, so we, after that first time where that happened, we tried it again, and Cole produced again, and that didn't happen. And it didn't happen for a long time. It just stopped happening. So we were just like, okay, maybe because this is the first time that had ever happened for Cole, this is why it was so severe. And then once his body got used to it, we figured that's why it wasn't continuing to happen.
Yeah, I thought my body was like, whoa, what's happening?
Literally freaking out. But then it happened again when we were more active trying to have a baby. And it happened again, and we were like, oh my goodness. And Cole was like in tears because it was so painful. And then we realized, oh wait, there might be a correlation between having an ongoing UTI potentially and then having AD from producing.
Yes.
And that was our conclusion.
Right. Probably the correct conclusion.
Yeah.
Because it's the only, like, you know, straightforward correlation we could find. And so now we're just really cognizant of that. I'm always trying to take really good care of my bladder, and usually my bladder's in a pretty good spot. But now we know. So if you're planning on being intimate for the first time and you don't know how your body is going to react, you may want to prepare for an autonomic dysreflexia event because it could definitely happen, unfortunately.
Yes. And not every person with specifically spinal cord injury, a lot of men's ability to ejaculate is affected. Cole can, but not every person can. That's what made it easier for us to be able to try naturally, is because we knew we could. And so people would ask, can you have babies naturally? Like, technically we should be able to, because we have everything that we need for that to happen. But that's not always the case for people with SEI. Some people just can't produce because that connection is just disrupted.
Yeah, or that reflex, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do to prepare if you're worried about an AD event, there is a cream or lotion or something that you essentially just rub on your chest once the event has started, and you leave it on your chest until it's gone away, and as soon as it's gone, you take it off promptly, because what it's doing is it's working really hard to help lower your body's blood pressure, because that's the biggest risk, is like, that's why my head was pounding so hard, is the blood pressure.
Yes.
So that cream is a great tool if this is something that you struggle with. If you have AD and you're worried about intimacy, this would be a good safety measure for you to have on hand.
Yeah, we can put it in the description below. I don't know if it's prescribed or not.
I'm not sure either. I've never used it, so I don't have firsthand experience. I just know that it is available.
Yes, but it can be very dangerous. So as soon as your blood pressure is lower, you have to take it off immediately, and then wear gloves. If someone's applying it for you, they must wear gloves because it would also lower their heart rate.
It's intense.
It's you only want to use it if it's absolutely necessary.
Right.
But in Cole's case, I think your blood pressure was extremely high, and I'm glad it wasn't worse.
Yeah. I know. We got over it. We stuck together through it. But that definitely was a memorable thing for us.
It was scary, for sure.
It was scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're here, though.
We went in hot and heavy with this first question, y'all.
I know. I think they're a little more tame after this. Okay, you go ahead. You go number 2.
This one says, did you find any resources helpful when you began exploring intimacy after SEI, AIDS, and then also erogenous zones? We had some questions about erogenous zones overall. And the answer is yes. So when Cole and I first started dating, I definitely Googled intimacy because I wanted to know, and I wanted to make sure.
After the wheelchair weddings, you Googled?
After wheelchair weddings, I was like, okay, I'm going to marry him. Now let's see if we can have babies, basically. And so I Googled that, and there are resources available. Not all of them are very detailed. It was just kind of like debunking misconceptions, saying that, you know, people in wheelchairs and with disabilities are capable of love and relationships, kind of on the relationship side of it. But we did find this specific website. What is it called?
Sexualitysei.org.
Yes, sexualitysei.org. We just went through it, and it is a great website. And if you need details, this website will provide you details.
They got like videos showing you how things can be used and tools can be implemented in the bedroom.
Yeah.
It's going into detail that Charisma and I are never going to go into.
No.
So if you really want those kind of details, this is the website for you.
Yes. It's a great website, and then they also have for healthcare professionals as well. So if you're a healthcare professional and you want to know how better to talk to your patients, it's a great website for that. So check that out. They have resources, tools like wedges, straps that you can use.
Chairs.
The intimate riders are a really big thing in the SCI world, and it shows you how to use it. So it's a great website.
Yeah, they've got a lot to offer there. But to answer the second part of the question about like erogenous zones, definitely my body changed a lot. I cannot feel from here down, and I can only feel the inside of my arms. So my sensation is way different than it used to be, and it's way different than a non-disabled person. I feel very sensitively where I do feel. So Charisma has discovered where those places are.
Well, in you.
And me.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's ticklish, so I don't allow her to touch those spots. But other times it's just the right thing. And so and that's going to be individual, so no one needs to know where mine are. But go find your own.
Yeah, so I think it's important for people with the disability that affects their sensation to explore different erogenous zones, because everyone has that. I mean, people, you have them on your feet, your armpits. There's so many different zones for everyone. So it's important for you to just explore that on your own and do some research. But I think that helps a lot with people with SEI who have lost sensation to find different areas that bring them happiness. And that makes it better for them.
Absolutely. I would recommend a scalp massager to anybody.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cole loves his scalp massager.
I love it. It's like the best stocking stuffer gift. Okay, how do you separate the roles of caregiving from being an intimate partner? I think this one's for you.
This is a very common question that we get. And the short answer is I don't separate the two. Because I think that while I'm being Cole's caregiver, I'm also being Cole's wife and vice versa. So I just never separate the two. I feel like they go hand in hand. And I don't want to separate the two. Because I feel like while I'm caregiving, there are moments to be intimate and loving. And I like that part of our relationship. So I feel like that keeps it very intimate and doesn't feel like I'm working or, I don't know. It just makes me feel better. I just like to, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm stuttering.
It's just a casual part of our relationship, I think. It's so normal for us that because we love each other so much, we can do this normal activity in our lives and still feel all of that love.
Yeah, and that isn't to say that you have to combine them. I think in some relationships, maybe they need to separate those two roles because that's what works for them. But for us, I'd rather, and we do better when we don't separate the roles and I'm just both at the same time.
That's just our dynamic.
Yeah.
We found that it's worked really well for us, and we've talked seriously about hiring a caregiver so that Charisma wouldn't have to do any part of that, and we both decided that wasn't the best for us.
Yeah.
So we have a great dynamic and we're just rocking with it and it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great dynamic. Oh my gosh.
Dynamic?
It's a great dynamic.
Well, that kind of leads into the next question, which is, does it take planning to be intimate? Is the lack of spontaneity a challenge in like just staying in the moment?
Yeah. That's a good question. You want to answer that one?
You think I should answer
We can
it?
both answer it. You start.
From my perspective, I don't think it gets in the way of spontaneity. I think we are very spontaneous. Sometimes it does take planning. Like if there hasn't been a spontaneous moment that's just come up in a little while, then yeah, maybe we'll take some time to plan. But a lot of our intimacy happens just spontaneously. And even though it might take like a transfer to get into bed or, transfer onto the couch or whatever the case may be, that doesn't really stop us. I think we're pretty good at staying in the moment. We've learned how to just have fun through those moments that involve caregiving to get to the point where we want to be, because we both want to be at that point and we're both working together to get there and we both want to stay in the moment. So it's just a collaborative effort to keep it, hot and heavy.
So I do understand this perspective from the non-disabled person. I understand this question. And I've seen this question a lot from women who date, men with SEI specifically. And I do think it is a challenge to stay in the zone, in the moment. Because there are things that you have to do that are different than non-disabled couples. Not every couple has to do these things, but you do have to prepare. Some people may have to take medicine like sildenafil to help even get to that moment. Yeah. Some people may have to, again, do an IC, do a program before any of those moments. There can be a lot of preparation depending on the couple, and that can affect the spontaneity. It could be harder to be spontaneous because you can't just get in bed. You have to do all these, you have to transfer, you have to take off the clothes. Like, it's just so much more that you do have to do.
There are disruptions.
There's no disruptions. Doubt. Yeah. But I think it's a lot mentally to stay in the moment. And you have to fight mentally to stay in the moment. And so I feel like at the beginning of our relationship, that was easy. It was so easy to stay in the moment because we were so excited and, we were just loved being around each other. But I think that it does become challenging over time to stay in the moment. But I think my biggest advice is during the transfer, a hug, give a little kiss, just find moments to be intimate while doing these different things. Yeah, I just feel like it's important to just find those moments to stay intimate and not let yourself get pulled out of the moment because it is easy, I think.
Right.
So I know this question was specifically about like the physical intimacy, but I also think it's important, again, to just remember that there are other ways to be intimate that isn't just physical. So watching a movie together and your partner's in their chair and you are sitting really close to them, there's not much preparing that goes into that. You just randomly say, hey, I want to watch a movie, then you guys watch a movie. So also finding intimate moments where it doesn't require a lot of preparation and you can be spontaneous is important too. So you don't feel like you're missing out on that spontaneous adventure when it comes to intimacy, because you're still finding ways to do that.
Right. We find so many ways. I mean, we find intimacy throughout all day, every day, pretty much. And most of it is spontaneous because it doesn't, there's nothing blocking us from a hug and a snuggle and a little kiss on the cheek while she's working at her computer, stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of times when Cole's at the computer, I'll come up behind them and like hug him from behind and like give him a little kiss and like, how are you? Oh man, that was, that came out of nowhere.
You just gag thinking about giving me a kiss?
No, I did not. I did not. Rude. But no, I like come behind him and hug him and everything. So I feel like we find a lot of ways to be intimate in touch. And it's funny because I think one of the questions that we didn't put in here, but was like, how are you guys intimate when Charisma talks so much about how she is not super affectionate? And I'm like, okay, I understand that, where you're coming from, but I feel like me not being super affectionate has nothing to do with like intimacy. Yeah. I don't know what it does.
That's also like a PDA thing too.
You're
so affectionate with me.
Yeah, you're right. It's more so PDA than just affection in general.
Yeah.
Okay, this question. How has your perspective on intimacy changed while going through infertility?
Oh.
That is a really good question. When I saw that question, I was like,
oh, that's really good.
Yeah, well, it's so good because it's hitting at striking a chord with us.
Yeah.
Because in 2023, I mean, if everything we were going through, especially what Charisma was going through specifically, definitely had an effect on intimacy. There's no doubt about that. And if a relationship can go through all that without it affecting intimacy, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Because it's just a lot. I mean, the constant shots, which, are literal hormones being injected into your body. I mean, hormones are, that's what's driving a lot of activity and a lot of behavior.
Yeah.
And so when you're on such a roller coaster all the time, it's just different. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Cole's saying I was just up and down all the time. Well, I mean, that's essentially what he said.
Who can blame you? You were shooting yourself up with hormones.
I know. So like last year going through it, we did have a lot of moments where we were intimate. We were always hugging and cuddling and being together.
Because we still love each other, so we're intimate with each other.
Yeah. But also because there were a lot of moments where it was hard and we just needed to hug.
Yeah.
Like we're sad and hurting, so we wanted to hug each other. So I think that kind of intimacy was definitely there because we needed to lean on each other in those moments. But I think the other kind of intimacy, I think it is challenging because like your drive is not there. You're giving yourself a lot of shots. You have suppositories that are just annoying and you just don't feel great, I feel like. And honestly, it may be very similar to what you feel like going through pregnancy. I've never been pregnant that far along to where I'm fully affected in that level, but I'm sure it's very similar. And after you have a baby with postpartum, I'm sure it's very similar on the woman's perspective. So yeah, I definitely think it did affect that for sure.
Yeah, that's to be expected. I mean, it's a lot going on.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
I know, and then you're so focused on other things that's the last thing you're thinking about too.
Right. Doing like the fertility stuff almost felt like a part-time job on the side with how much we were driving around, how much time was spent like just doing all the shots and preparing things. That is like, we have our full-time job. Now we got this like part-time job almost on the side. Mm-hmm. And then once it's bedtime, we just want to go to bed, and wake up because we know we got the same thing tomorrow. So yeah, it has an effect. Yeah,
you're just very preoccupied, I think, with like everything else that you just don't really think about it. So I don't know, if you've gone through IVF, infertility treatments, I'm curious to know if it's affected you and your partner's intimacy. Because I just think that there is an effect. And I don't think we talk about that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I was very impressed by that question because I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to hear too because I imagine it's a common experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So next, this is from an occupational therapist, your almost sister in arms, sister or brother in arms. Mm-hmm. What is important to remember when teaching SCI patients about intimacy after injury? Interesting. I think the first thing that they need to learn / just like accept is that it's going to be different. Obviously, it's going to be different. Once they've accepted that, then you can start doing some real work. Connecting them with these resources, I think, is hugely important. As a 16-year-old, I was very interested in these topics, but I don't really feel like I had much resources or education. And that was too bad, because that left, a young man going home in a whole new world, trying to figure that out on his own, which was, that was very awkward. So I would recommend giving them like the same resource we just shared, like that website. I mean, that's got to have the majority of everything they could ask. And then beyond that, encouraging them to get connected with other people with spinal cord injuries who are in relationships. Peer mentors at the hospital are huge. I had a peer mentor, and that made a big difference for me. We didn't talk about those things, but I never asked them about those things. So if there's someone involved volunteering at the hospital who can come in and like talk on these topics to your patients, I think that that would be an amazing resource. Outside of that, though, the website is great. And then just encourage them to live the full intimate life they want. Don't let them shell themselves or limit themselves, because you can still have a very full experience.
Yeah, I agree. Did you feel like you were able to ask, like when you were at Shepherd specifically, did you feel like you were able to ask questions about intimacy, or were you embarrassed? Did they offer that as an option?
It being so long ago, I don't remember exactly. I was on drugs for a good bit of it, like lots of medicines. I did go to therapy, and I had a therapist, and we talked about sensitive topics. I don't recall there being like a specific lesson on intimacy and sexuality, though. I don't remember that.
You don't recall being curious?
Oh, I recall being curious, but there were also a million other things I was thinking about, like how am I going to brush my teeth? So, step by step, baby steps. Intimacy was a little down the line with just surviving. But yeah, it just didn't seem to be like a huge focal point, and I would have appreciated at least like one, 2-hour class or something.
Yeah. So yeah, as an OT, just making sure if you're working at a facility.
The words are hard today.
They really are. If you're working at a facility with newly injured patients, make sure they have the room and the ability to ask these questions, even if it's anonymous. If there's like a box where they can have,
I think how it should work is if you're in a hospital and you want it to be anonymous, hospital have HIPAA laws, so if there's just one person, maybe it's the rec therapist, for example, or OTs. Yeah, it could just be the OT. Y'all are educated on this stuff. Have an OT who is known to cover those things with patients.
Yeah.
And all of the patients are made aware. We know in OT we're teaching you how to use an IC kit, and I'm helping you with brushing your hair. But if you're also interested in sexuality, we have, I can give you a session with Kathy. And Kathy's going to teach you all about that stuff. Or Brian, whoever it is.
Yeah, but then also I was thinking of a way to anonymously submit questions.
Oh.
So I was thinking of a box where they can write something down, but I'm thinking the amount of newly injured people who just can't write. And so I was thinking of you, with your bell trying to write. Imagine that.
Hey, can you write this down for me? But don't know that I'm asking you to write this down.
Exactly. But some kind of way to submit questions anonymously, and then at the end of however, every month or something like that, you answer the question, send out a newsletter or something to all the patients where a question is answered, so they don't know who's asking these questions, but they can ask the question and get some kind of answer. So I feel like maybe that's a way, because I think especially young people have a hard time asking these questions that may feel embarrassing. Even if they know that's the therapist that talks about intimacy, it's still kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I do not have a system constructed for figuring out that situation. But I mean, if people are awkward about it and they don't want to ask these questions, just do your best to cultivate a culture of openness and welcomeness. Because I did feel that way at Shepherd. I don't feel like someone wouldn't have answered my questions if I went to someone and asked. I just didn't really know where to go or what to do, or told that I could. But it was a very open environment that I feel like I could have asked in. So as long as that's being cultivated and you're giving people the space they need, then I think you're doing as much as you can. Okay, last question. How is this one? Do you read this one? Who read the last one?
I don't know, babe.
You do the honors.
Okay. Did I start it off? You started it, so I'll end it. Okay. Yeah. How do the challenges of moving around affect your desire to be intimate? And that was a question directly.
Oh.
aimed at Cole.
Yeah, so I do think it has an effect, for sure. Because, I mean, I would love to just, like, go literally pick up charisma and, like, run wherever I want to run to. I can't do that. I would do that if I could do that, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
So there are definitely limitations. The desire for me is always there. You know, I got a pretty strong desire. I do prefer being in situations where I am less limited by my disability. Mm-hmm. So when she's sitting on my lap, for example, that's great because I can use my arms just fine. Mm-hmm. When we're on the couch together, I can use my arms just fine. I really like that. When I'm laying down, it's harder for me to use my arms. I do feel like there's an effect, and I prefer to be in a position where I'm more able, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like it doesn't really affect your desire.
No.
You specifically. It's just that you always want to be in a position where you feel like you can do more and you can be more independent. And I feel like that's just in life in general.
Yeah.
I think Cole in general just wants to be in a position where he can be more independent. So if we were doing something and we were in bed all day, like although that's really fun, I think that kind of annoys you because you can do but so much when you're in bed.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially when the bed's down. And I love that we have a bed where the head raises up because that does give me a lot more mobility, which is great.
Yeah.
But without that, it would be hard.
Yeah, so I think in general, Cole would rather just be in positions where he could be more independent, where he's up in his chair and he can help with the dishes, he could help do this and do that.
For sure.
But I think there are people, though, where the mobility would affect their desire, and I think that is more common in the beginning of an injury, potentially. So, like, in the beginning of your injury, do you think that had a greater effect?
That's a great point. Yeah, that's very true. Like, I'm only talking from my experience. When I was first injured, I do think it was even more of a barrier for me because I wasn't very good with my body. I just hadn't figured things out yet. I hadn't built up a lot of strength. I hadn't settled in to my autonomic dysreflexia chills where I know what's happening, you know, with my body. I didn't know all of that stuff, and I think it made me scared. And in the last video, we talked about, like, college. I didn't go on a date in college until, like, the very end, and that was largely because I was just, like, I didn't know if I could do anything, you know? And I was scared of that, and I didn't want to be embarrassed. But there are people with other disabilities who are more limited, and I imagine it does have effect on desire for them. Maybe not, maybe it does, but in my experience, I have a lot of desire.
I know, you can only talk about your personal experience.
Yeah.
And where you are now, too.
Right.
I'm sure if we filmed this video, like, I don't know, 6 years ago, or before we met, or before you were dating, I think a lot of these answers would be different.
Would be a lot different, probably.
But you're in a different place mentally. We're married, we've been married for a while, been together for a while, so I feel like both of us are in different places, and we've learned a lot, and we've experienced a lot, so I feel like our answers are definitely biased based on, you know.
We have a lot of experience. We've learned a lot.
Yes, but I think that a lot of people may not be in the same mental headspace. Cole had to go through a lot of growth and confidence, and we as a couple had to learn a lot, how to be creative, how to deal with this thing, deal with that thing. So I feel like it's all a learning curve. Again, going back to the first video, there's a huge learning curve. And so we are where we are now because we took the time to learn, figure out different ways to be intimate and just learn more about each other.
Yeah, I mean, it took me years before I was really started, like, trying to date. And then it took me years to figure out everything else from there. So it's like, this is not something that's just gonna, you know, you wake up with and you're ready to go. It's something that you just slowly warm into and learn and embrace over time.
Yeah. I think that was all the questions.
I think that's all the questions, guys. So that's it for the intimacy topic. I hope you all have been able to learn something. I hope we've answered some of your questions.
Yeah.
For everybody out there who submitted your respectful questions, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been a lot of fun to put together, to think about, to work through.
Yeah.
We're going to share a lot of those resources in our description. So please look at the description and you'll find those websites. And guys, make love, not war.
God, I was not expecting you to say that. What?
What is that from? Is that like a
I have no
slogan
clue.
for something? Anyway.
I have no clue. Is it a slogan?
Make love, not war.
I'm looking it up.
It's a thing.
Let's look it up.
Make love, not
no,
war. Anti-war slogan.
Commonly associated with the American counterculture in the 1960s. Oh.
Yeah, I'm deep in the American counterculture of the 1960s.
That makes sense. It does make sense that it's a 1960s thing.
Yeah. Make love, not war. I think it's appropriate today, you know?
Yeah. hopefully we answered a lot of your questions. Again, there are a lot more resources that will go into detail, especially for different disabilities. We only know SEI, and so we only found a good resources for SEI, but there are so many different disabilities out there.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Yes.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and
And stay positive. All right.
Bye.
Get up there.